Did you miss me?
Christian Hanna Horror.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Christian Hanna Horror back here again. Glad to be showing my face again. It was a crazy week, but I appreciate you guys checking out the collection videos that I did. And we're back, and here we go. This will be the most controversial yet, ranking the Big Four Slasher movie Part 3's. We're doing Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, Friday the 13th Part 3, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Leatherface. So this list, I really had to battle, once again, which movies are just my sole favorites that I love, and let's look at the nitty-gritty. Let's see how well these films are made, how well these films are executed, how good they sound, etc., etc. And it was very hard to put pen to paper on this, but I told myself, Christian, just do what you think is right. So that's what I did, and here we go with ranking the Big Four Slasher Part 3's. Coming in at number 4 for me is going to be Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Leatherface. All four of these movies, I really love them. You know, with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, though, it's interesting because you have this first groundbreaking film that kind of seemed like it was very dark and serious, although Tobe Hooper himself would disagree with you and say it's very satirical and funny and a lot of humor in it. But for the public, mostly it was horrifying, especially at the time. And then you have the second entry in the series, which is extremely satirical and funny. So where do you go with the Part 3? It's interesting. What approach do you take? Do you try to reel it back in a little bit and be serious? Or do you stick with the forefront of humor? I don't know. And I don't know that they really quite figured out the approach they were going for in Part 3. That's not to say that I don't like it, but I think it was a little aimless. Not to mention, though, that the production on this movie was halted many times, and New Line was very tough on the guy directing this movie, so I don't blame him at all. This guy's movie was extremely truncated, and when you watch the unrated version on DVD and Blu-ray, it is more enjoyable, to say the least. So Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, I love it, but there's 3 more movies that I love a little bit more. So this is going to be a very controversial number 3, guys. I had to battle with movies that I really just adore to my core, and actually taking them down and looking at these movies with pen and paper and saying, okay, which one had the best production, which one's the glossiest look, which one has best special effects. I had to factor in so many things. That being said, hard as it was to put this on paper, number 3, Halloween 3. Season of the Witch. Maybe shocking to some, you all know I adore Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. But goodness, man, there's 2 other movies in here that when you just really sit down and look at these movies, they're both insta-classics. Arguably, all 4 of these movies are insta-classics, but we're talking about 2 of the biggest slasher movies ever. With that being said, Halloween 3, it's a lovely little horror movie. I understand it's still kind of a niche horror movie. It's got a bigger audience now. It's being more accepted, and I love that. But when you say Halloween, the first thing you still think about is Michael Myers, and rightfully so. He is Halloween. He embodies the spirit of the Halloween atmosphere. So, Halloween 3, while it's got the great music from John and Alan Howarth, who needs more credit than he gets, and you got Tom Atkins, Stacey Nelk, and Dan O'Herlihy, it's all great. Tommy Lee Wallace made a great little horror movie, and I adore it to no end, and I will defend it to no end. But when you really try to rank these movies, I had to really factor which of these slasher movies are the best. And arguably, Halloween 3 is not even a slasher movie, but it is Halloween 3 in this list, and it's part of the Halloween franchise, contrary to a lot of Halloween fanboys. I know it's not Michael, but John Carpenter says it's Halloween 3, so it is Halloween 3. Alright guys, so coming in at number 2 is going to be the hockey mask wearing Jason Voorhees in Friday the 13th Part 3. I have to be honest, deciding Part 3 in Friday and Nightmare was pretty tough, and we're going to talk about Nightmare in a second, but Friday the 13th Part 3 is one of the most identifiable Friday the 13th movies. It's where Jason gets his mask. It's 3D. It's bombastic. It's a movie that's trying to be exactly what it needs to be, an experience, a fun slasher movie, and that's perfect. We don't need to be walking out of the theater feeling like we just saw Shawshank Redemption. These are horror movies. They're roller coaster rides, and that's what Friday the 13th Part 3 delivers. That's one of the hardest things to discuss when trying to make people realize what they're seeing when they watch a Friday the 13th movie. Don't expect to have all your emotions go through a whirlwind. It's a horror movie that's supposed to make you jump. It's like a roller coaster, and arguably Friday the 13th Part 3 is one of the most fun roller coasters in the world of horror. 3D aspect is fun. I can only wish that I could have seen the movie in a real 3D experience. Maybe someday I'll go to an Alamo Draft House and they'll do something like that. But those 3D glasses you get with the DVD, just don't cut it. Alright guys, so number one. This movie ranked as number one of my favorite horror movies in the whole decade of the 80s. A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, The Dream Warriors. Chuck Russell has shown time and time again he is one of the best directors in the world of horror. We saw it with Dream Warriors. We saw it with The Blob, which was a very underrated horror movie. And then he went on to do movies like The Mask. This guy knows what he's doing. And he essentially saved the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Although I adored Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, the world really didn't at the time. And they really didn't know what to do with Freddy. He had a narrow path he went down with Part 1. Part 2 completely went another way. So deciding what to do is tough. You could almost argue that Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 was kind of like a Halloween 3. What do? We've got to reel this back in. And they reeled it back in with Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, and they hooked a big fish when this movie came out as good as it was. Dream Warriors has some of the best taglines from Freddy, has some of the best kills from Freddy, has some of the best looks from Freddy, and definitely has the best soundtrack. Dokken is one of my favorite bands, and I gotta give it to Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 for introducing me to them. Tooth and Nail is a fantastic record if you guys haven't checked that out. Dream Warriors is of one of the greatest horror movies, period, much less a slasher movie in my opinion. It's everything that the 80s was so great about. It was loud, it was fast, it was gory, it was nasty, but it was so fun at the same time. You have to have fun when watching Dream Warriors because every scene in the movie is great, but it also shows camaraderie between kids, and I think that's what's so important about the movie is that you really get to care about the characters. I don't know that a horror movie had made you cared about characters so much like you did in Dream Warriors. I wasn't there. I'm not old enough to have lived through it, but watching all the horror movies from the 80s and 70s that I have, when you think about a movie that says which one made me want to like every single character, Dream Warriors did it. Kincaid, Joey, all of them, they're great, and I love that movie. I'm rambling on and on now, but I'll save you guys from that. Basically what I'm saying is Dream Warriors is that darn good. So there it is, guys. That's my ranking of the big four slashers, and interesting because Halloween 3 is not really a slasher movie, but it is part of the Halloween franchise, and it is a part 3, so there we go. Be sure to tune in next time when we rank the big four slasher movie part 4s, which is definitely gonna be interesting. This is Christian Hanna Horror, guys. Thanks for watching. Please be sure to drop a comment below. Let me know your list. Subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second. And also check out my Teespring for all kinds of great merchandise and rep Christian Hanna Horror wherever you go. Thank you guys for watching. It's good to be back. We'll see you next time.